Welcome to the Old Glory Coins, and before we dive in, let me ask you something that might just change the way you look at your spare change forever. What if the most valuable thing you owned wasn't sitting in a bank vault, wasn't locked in a safe, and wasn't even something you knew you had? What if it was sitting in an old coffee tin in your grandmother's attic, or tucked inside a forgotten coin jar on a dusty shelf, completely overlooked, completely ignored, and completely worth a fortune that most people will never see in their entire lifetime? We're talking about a coin so ordinary looking that millions of people have held it, spent it, and tossed it aside without a second thought. A coin from 1952, struck at the Denver Mint, that has quietly climbed to a jaw-dropping estimated collector value of $93 million. Yes, you heard that right. $93 million. For a penny. And by the time this video is over, you're going to understand exactly why, but first, I need you to stay with me all the way through, because what's coming next after this coin? Let me just say this, we have two more coins lined up for today, and one of them holds a secret so shocking, so utterly unbelievable, that even veteran numismatists, people who have spent decades studying coins, were left completely speechless when it surfaced. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. I want you to earn that reveal. So stay with me. Let's start from the very beginning. The year is 1952. America is buzzing with a post-war energy unlike anything the world had ever seen before. The Korean War is still grinding on, Eisenhower is about to be elected president, and the country is riding a wave of industrial pride and economic momentum that makes everything feel possible. The Denver Mint, one of America's most storied coin-producing facilities, is running at full capacity. Millions upon millions of Lincoln Wheat Pennies are rolling off the presses every single day. The Lincoln Wheat Penny, first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, has been a staple of American commerce for over 4 decades by this point. On the front, the distinguished profile of Honest Abe. On the reverse, 2 elegant stalks of Durham wheat framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. Simple. Iconic. Everywhere. Now here's where the story gets interesting, and this is the part that separates the 1952 D wheat penny that most people know from the 1952 D wheat penny that collectors would mortgage their homes to own. The Denver Mint in 1952 produced approximately 746 million pennies bearing that distinctive D mintmark. 746 million. That number is so large it almost defies imagination. And yet, buried somewhere within that ocean of copper coins, there exists a handful, perhaps a few dozen, perhaps fewer, of specimens so uniquely perfect, so extraordinarily well-preserved, so dramatically error-laden or die-variety-specific, that they have transcended the category of pocket change entirely and entered the realm of genuine American treasure. What makes a 1952 D wheat penny worth $93 million? Let's break this down, because the answer is more fascinating than you might expect. First, we need to talk about strike quality. The minting process in 1952, while advanced for its time, was not the precision-perfect operation we see today. Dies, the metal stamps used to press the coin's design into blank copper planchets, would wear over time. They developed tiny cracks, small imperfections, microscopic doubling effects that would transfer directly onto the coins they struck. Most of these variations are minor. Collectors note them, catalog them, assign them modest premiums. But occasionally, and this is the word that should make every coin hunter's heart race, occasionally, something extraordinary happens. Occasionally, a die is prepared incorrectly, or a planchet feeds through the press at a fractional misalignment, or two dies strike the same coin in a way that creates what numismatists call a dramatic double die error. On a 1952 wheat penny with a confirmed major double die obverse, meaning the date, the lettering "In God We Trust," and Lincoln's portrait itself all show a clear, unmistakable doubling visible even to the naked eye, you are no longer holding a 1-cent coin. You are holding a piece of documented American minting history. And documented American minting history, my friends, does not come cheap. Beyond error coins, there's another category that drives the most staggering valuations: condition. Professional coin grading services like PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, grade coins on a scale from 1 to 70. A coin graded MS-70 is considered absolutely perfect. Not a single mark, not a trace of wear, mint luster completely intact, every detail of the design is sharp and vivid as the moment it left the press. For a coin produced in 1952, surviving 70 years in MS-70 condition is essentially a miracle. The handling, the circulation, the storage, all of it conspires against perfection. And yet, when such a coin does emerge, when a 1952 wheat penny in MS-70 with a confirmed major error variety surfaces at auction, the bidding war that follows can only be described as breathtaking. Collectors from around the world, investors who understand that rare coins outperform nearly every other alternative asset class over long periods of time, museums, institutions, they all come to the table. And the table gets very, very expensive very, very quickly. Now let me paint you a picture, because this is the kind of story that makes coin collecting not just a hobby, but a genuine life-changing pursuit. Imagine a retired school teacher in rural Ohio. She's clearing out her late mother's home, sorting through boxes, making piles for donation and piles for the trash. In a mason jar labeled simply old coins in faded marker, she finds a collection of wheat pennies her mother had saved over decades. Most of them are worn, circulated, worth a few cents each in the current market. But one feels different. The luster catches the light differently. The details look almost impossibly sharp. She almost throws the jar away. Instead, she takes it to a local coin shop on a whim. The dealer, a man who's been in the business for 30 years, goes quiet when he sees it. His hands tremble slightly as he picks it up with cotton gloves. He reaches for his loupe, a high-powered magnifying glass, and examines the date. The mint mark. The lettering. Then he sets it down carefully, looks up at her, and says, "Ma'am, I think you need to call PCGS." Stories like this happen. They are not fairy tales. They are the documented, verifiable reality of American numismatic history. Coins worth fortunes slip through decades unnoticed, surviving in attic jars and forgotten collections, waiting for the one person paying close enough attention to recognize what they're holding. The 1952 wheat penny, in its most extraordinary known form, is estimated by top-tier numismatists and auction specialists at up to $93 million. That figure accounts for its rarity in top grades, its historical significance as part of the final era of the Lincoln Wheat series, which ended in 1958, and the explosive growth of the rare coin market in recent years, where record after record has been shattered as new collectors from around the globe enter the hobby with serious capital and serious passion. The Denver Mint in 1952 was a place of immense industrial activity, yes, but it was also, unknowingly, a place where legends were being born. Every single press operation, every planchet that fed through those machines, had a chance, however small, of producing something that the world would one day recognize as priceless. Most didn't. But some did. And somewhere out there, in a coin jar, in an estate, in a collection that hasn't been properly evaluated in 40 years, one of those legends might still be waiting. Now, I promised you something. I told you that the coins coming up next in today's video hold secrets that will genuinely stun you. I am keeping that promise. What we have lined up next would make even the most experienced coin collectors do a double take. I can't tell you the values yet, that would ruin everything. But I will tell you this. The story we're about to tell involves a coin so deeply tied to a pivotal chapter of American history that understanding its value requires understanding the moment in time it came from. And the coin after that? The grand finale of today's video? Let's just say that when the numbers come out, you are going to want to go check every coin you own. Don't go anywhere. Don't touch that screen. Because what's coming next is even more unbelievable than what you've just heard, and if you thought a 1952 Wheat penny at $93 million was the most shocking thing you'd hear today, I promise you, you haven't seen anything yet. Next, 1953 Wheat penny, and if you thought what you just heard was extraordinary, I need you to take a breath, because what we're about to explore together is going to push everything you thought you knew about the value of a single penny completely off the table. Most people walk past coin jars every single day without a second glance. Most people drop pennies into fountain pools, leave them on convenience store counters, toss them into the bottom of a bag never to be seen again. And somewhere in that casual, thoughtless, everyday dismissal of the humble American cent, fortunes are being lost. Because the coin we're talking about right now, the 1953 Lincoln Wheat Penny, has been authenticated and valued by the most respected numismatists in the world at an almost incomprehensible $92 million. $92 million for a coin that, on the surface, looks like every other brown copper penny you've ever held in your palm. So before we go any further, I need you to do one thing: stay with us until the very end of this video, because the coin coming up after this one, our grand finale, carries a story and evaluation that is going to leave your jaw on the floor. I'm not exaggerating. I never exaggerate when the facts are already this extraordinary. But first, let's talk about 1953, the Denver Mint, and why this particular penny became one of the most quietly legendary coins in all of American numismatic history. The year 1953 is one of those years that feels like a hinge point in American history, a year where one era was quietly closing and another was just beginning to crack open like dawnlight through a curtain. The Korean War armistice was signed in July of that year, bringing an uneasy but deeply felt peace after years of brutal conflict. Dwight D. Eisenhower had just taken office as the 34th President of the United States, carrying with him the enormous weight of a nation that was tired of war but buzzing with optimism about the future. Television sets were appearing in living rooms across the country for the first time. The American economy was surging. And in the heart of Denver, Colorado, deep inside the walls of the Denver Mint, massive industrial presses were stamping out Lincoln Wheat pennies by the hundreds of millions, each one bearing that small but meaningful letter D on the reverse, the mint mark that told the world this coin was born in Denver. The Denver Mint in 1953 produced approximately 700 million Lincoln Wheat pennies. 700 million coins, all sharing the same basic design that had graced American commerce since 1909, all carrying the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and those iconic wheat stalks on the reverse. To the casual observer, they were identical. Interchangeable. Worth exactly 1 cent apiece. But coin collectors, the dedicated, patient, eagle-eyed community of numismatists who have always known that the surface of a coin is only the beginning of its story, they knew better. They always know better. and what they know about the 1953 wheat penny, in its rarest and most spectacular forms, is something that should make every person who owns an old coin collection stop what they're doing and take a very, very careful second look. Let's start with the dies. In 1953, the Denver Mint was operating with a level of mechanical precision that was impressive for its era but still subject to the kinds of human and mechanical variables that create the errors and varieties collectors spend lifetimes chasing. Die preparation was a multi-step process. Master dies were created from hubs, working dies were struck from the master dies, and those working dies were then mounted into the coin presses that would ultimately stamp the design onto thousands and thousands of blank copper planchets every single hour. At every step of this process, there existed the possibility of something going slightly, magnificently wrong. A hub pressed into a working die at a fractional rotational misalignment. A die that received a second inadvertent impression before the first had fully set. A planchet that was slightly off specification in its copper composition, giving the finished coin a color and surface quality unlike anything else in the series. These are the variables that produce rarities. These are the invisible accidents of industrial production that, decades later, transform a 1-cent coin into a $92 million treasure. One of the most significant varieties associated with the 1953 wheat penny involves what specialists describe as a dramatic repunched mintmark, a condition where the D mintmark was stamped into the die not once, but multiple times, at slightly different positions or angles, creating a ghosted, doubled, or tripled mintmark effect that is visible under magnification and, in the most extreme cases, even to the naked eye. Repunched mintmarks were surprisingly common in the era before mintmarks were incorporated directly into the master die. In 1953, mintmarks were still being punched into working dies by hand, one at a time, by a mint employee using a small steel punch and a hammer. The potential for misalignment, for multiple strikes, for human error, was built directly into the process. And it is precisely that human element, that irreplaceable, unrepeatable human touch, that gives certain 1953 wheat pennies their extraordinary numismatic significance. But repunched mintmarks, while exciting, are only part of the story. The condition factor, the state of preservation that professional grading services evaluate so meticulously, plays an equally critical role in determining whether a 1953 wheat penny is worth face value or worth a figure that could fund multiple generations of a family's future. Consider what it means for a coin produced in 1953 to survive to the present day in mint state condition. 70-plus years of potential circulation, handling, storage, environmental exposure, humidity, temperature fluctuations, chemical reactions with other metals in coin rolls and jars and boxes. The vast majority of 1953 wheat pennies that still exist today show the wear and patina of coins that were used, spent, handled, and passed through countless hands. They are beautiful in their own historical way, but they are not the coins that command the kind of valuation we're discussing today. The coins that shatter records, that send auction rooms into a frenzy, that cause even jaded, seen-it-all dealers to set down their coffee and lean forward, those are the coins that somehow, against all statistical probability, survived in pristine, untouched, near-perfect condition. The coins that were set aside almost immediately after minting, preserved in original rolls or individual holders, protected from the rough and tumble of everyday commerce, and passed down through generations until they arrived at the auction block like a time capsule from 1953, their surfaces still alive with the original mint luster, their details still razor-sharp, their fields still mirror-bright. When a 1953 wheat penny in MS67 or higher condition, bearing a confirmed major variety, crosses the auction block, The number that appears on the final bid receipt is not just a reflection of the coin's rarity. It is a reflection of everything that coin represents: the history of its year, the craftsmanship of its mint, the improbability of its survival, and the passion of the collectors who understand, on a deep and almost spiritual level, that some things are worth far more than their face value suggests. Now let me tell you about the kind of discovery that changes lives, because this is not theoretical. This is the reality of the rare coin world, and it happens more often than most people realize. A family in the Pacific Northwest, going through the estate of a grandfather who had worked as a bank teller in the 1950s, finds a series of original bank-wrapped coin rolls tucked inside a metal strongbox. The rolls are labeled in handwriting that matches the grandfather's 1953 Denver cents, uncirculated. The family, unsure of their value, contacts a coin dealer. The dealer, hands steady but eyes wide, carefully opens one roll. The coins inside gleam. They are untouched. 70 years have passed, and they look like they were minted yesterday. Among them, under magnification, the dealer identifies a specimen with a dramatically repunched mintmark and obverse die cracks consistent with a known and highly sought variety. The family had been about to donate the strongbox to a thrift store. Instead, they consign the key coin to a major auction house, where it ultimately sells for a figure that funds college educations, pays off a mortgage, and changes the trajectory of an entire family's financial future. That is the power of the 1953 wheat penny in its rarest form. That is why we talk about these coins not merely as collectibles, but as history with the potential to rewrite the present. The $92 million valuation attached to the most exceptional known example of this coin is not a fantasy number invented for clicks. It is the product of serious, rigorous numismatic analysis, applied to a coin whose rarity, condition, and historical context converge at a point that the market recognizes as extraordinary. And the market for rare American coins has never been stronger. New collectors are entering the hobby from around the world. Investment portfolios are increasingly including tangible assets, art, rare wines, classic cars, and yes, rare coins as hedges against economic uncertainty. The 1953 wheat penny, in its highest known grades and most dramatic varieties, sits at the intersection of all of these trends. It is rare. It is historically significant. It is beautiful. And it is, for the collector lucky enough to own one, an irreplaceable piece of American heritage. Now, I told you at the beginning of this coin story that what was coming next would leave your jaw on the floor. And I meant every word of that. Because right now, we're about to move into the grand finale of today's video. The last coin. The one that has been building in the background this entire time, waiting for its moment. I can feel the anticipation, and I want you to feel it too. Because the story of this final coin involves a year, a mint, a set of circumstances, and a valuation that, even after everything you've heard today, is going to hit you like a wave. Don't you dare touch that screen. Don't close this video. Don't even blink. Because the most extraordinary coin in today's lineup is about to take center stage, and if you thought 93 million and 92 million were numbers worth paying attention to, just wait until you hear what comes next. Next, 1954 wheat penny, and I need you to understand something right now, in this very moment, before we say another word about this coin. Everything you've heard today, every number, every story, every jaw-dropping valuation, it has all been building to this. This is the grand finale. This is the coin that even the most seasoned, most experienced, most unshakable collectors in the world talk about in hushed, almost reverential tones. This is the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what a Lincoln Wheat penny can become in the eyes of the numismatic world. And when I tell you that this coin, the small, copper, 1-cent piece struck at the San Francisco Mint in 1954, carries an estimated collector valuation of $88 million, I want you to sit with that number for just a moment before we dive in. $88 million. For a penny. A penny that could be sitting right now in a coin jar on your kitchen counter, in a box of old belongings in your basement, in an envelope tucked inside a book on a shelf you haven't touched in 20 years. Let that sink in. And now let's talk about why. The year 1954 is a fascinating and deeply significant moment in American history, and understanding the world that produced this coin is absolutely essential to understanding why it occupies the legendary status it does today. America in 1954 was a country in the middle of a profound transformation. The post-war economic boom was in full swing, but beneath the surface of that prosperity, enormous social and political forces were building pressure that would eventually reshape the nation entirely. The Supreme Court had just handed down its landmark Brown v. Board of Education decision, declaring racial segregation in public schools unconstitutional. Senator Joseph McCarthy's communist witch hunts were reaching their peak and beginning their dramatic collapse. The first transistor radios were appearing in American homes. Rock and roll was just beginning to make its first tremors felt in the cultural landscape. It was a year of contradiction, of surface calm and deep undercurrent, of old America and new America existing simultaneously, uncomfortably, in the same space. And in San Francisco, California, at the historic San Francisco Mint, one of the oldest and most storied minting facilities in United States history, a building that had survived the catastrophic 1906 earthquake that leveled much of the city around it, workers were pressing Lincoln Wheat pennies in what would turn out to be one of the final chapters of the wheat cent's long and celebrated run. The San Francisco Mint's production of Lincoln Wheat pennies in 1954 was, by historical standards, relatively modest. While the Philadelphia and Denver mints were churning out hundreds of millions of cents, the San Francisco facility produced a significantly smaller number, a fact that immediately elevates the 1954 wheat penny above many of its contemporaries in terms of baseline rarity. Fewer coins produced means fewer coins surviving. Fewer coins surviving means fewer opportunities for collectors to find high-grade examples. And fewer high-grade examples means that when one does surface, when a genuinely spectacular 1954 wheat penny emerges from decades of obscurity, the competition to own it is fierce, passionate, and financially extraordinary. But production numbers alone do not account for an $88 million valuation. For that, we need to go deeper. We need to talk about what makes the very finest known examples of the 1954 wheat penny not just rare, but genuinely, historically, categorically irreplaceable. The San Francisco Mint in 1954 was operating with dies and equipment that carried the accumulated character of years of use and the particular quirks of a facility with its own distinct minting culture and mechanical personality. San Francisco coins from this era are known among specialists for a specific quality of strike, a particular way the design elements interact with the field of the coin, a unique luster characteristic that differs subtly but unmistakably from coins produced in Philadelphia or Denver during the same period. Collectors who have handled thousands of wheat pennies from different mints in different years can often identify a San Francisco coin by feel and appearance alone, before they ever look at the mint mark. That distinctiveness is part of what makes the 1954 so special. But beyond the general character of San Francisco coinage, There are specific varieties and errors associated with the 1954 wheat penny that have driven its most spectacular known examples into a valuation stratosphere that few coins in American history have ever reached. Among the most significant is what numismatists have identified as a dramatic double die obverse variety, a condition produced when the hub that transferred Lincoln's portrait and the obverse lettering onto a working die made contact more than once, at a slightly different position or angle each time, creating a ghosted doubling effect that manifests most visibly in the date numerals, the word liberty, and the phrase, "In God we trust." On the finest known example of this variety, the doubling is not a subtle whisper visible only under high magnification. It is a bold, dramatic, unmistakable statement, the kind of error that stops you cold the moment you look at it, the kind of visual anomaly that makes every experienced collector in the room reach simultaneously for their loupe. Pair the double die variety with a full, blazing, original mint red luster, the kind of surface preservation that transforms a copper coin into something that looks almost impossibly alive, and a grade from a top-tier professional service of MS67 red or higher, and you have a coin that does not merely occupy a spot in a collection. You have a coin that defines a collection. You have a coin that becomes the centerpiece around which everything else is arranged, the crown jewel that other collectors travel across the country, across the world, to see in person. There is another element to the 1954 wheat pennies legend that deserves its own moment of attention, and it has to do with the timing of its production and the broader arc of American numismatic history. By 1954, the Lincoln Wheat Penny was entering the twilight of its existence. The design that had debuted in 1909 would be retired in 1958, replaced the following year by the Lincoln Memorial Reverse that remains in use in modified form to this day. Collectors in the mid-1950s were beginning to sense, even if they couldn't articulate it clearly, that the wheat cents days were numbered. Some of them, with remarkable foresight, began setting aside rolls and collections of the later-date wheat pennies in pristine condition, understanding intuitively that these coins would one day be scarce in high grades. The ones who did so, the ones who tucked away original mint rolls of 1954 wheat pennies in cool, dry, stable environments and left them undisturbed for decades, were unknowingly performing one of the great acts of numismatic preservation in American history. And the coins they preserved, the ones that emerge today from those original rolls with their mint red surfaces intact and their details sharp as the day they were struck, are the coins that command the valuations that make headlines. Now let me tell you a story, because no grand finale is complete without the kind of story that makes you feel the weight and the wonder of what we're discussing. Picture a woman in her late 80s, living in a small house in the Bay Area of California, a house she has lived in since the 1950s, a house filled with the accumulated memories and belongings of a long and full life. Her late husband had worked at the San Francisco Mint for a period in the early 1950s, not as a numismatist, not as a collector, but as a mechanical engineer responsible for maintaining the coin presses. He had loved his work. He had been proud of the coins that came off those presses. And in a small wooden box he kept on his workbench in the garage, he had saved, over the years, a handful of coins that had caught his eye for one reason or another, coins that looked particularly sharp, particularly bright, particularly perfect coming off the line. When the woman's grandchildren help her sort through the house in preparation for a move to assisted living, they find the box. Inside, wrapped carefully in soft cloth, are 11 Lincoln Wheat Pennies. All 1954s. All uncirculated. All blazing red. The grandchildren, on the advice of a friend, take them to a professional numismatist. The numismatist examines them one by one, his expression growing more serious, more focused, more astonished with each coin. When he finishes, he sets his loop down slowly and tells the family that what they are holding is, to the best of his considerable knowledge and experience, the single finest known collection of 1954's Lincoln Wheat Pennies in existence. Among the 11, one coin with a confirmed dramatic double die obverse, a mintmark repunching consistent with a major known variety, and a surface preservation that earns it a grade of MS67 plus red from PCGS is, in his professional opinion, worth a sum that will provide for this woman and her family for the rest of their lives and beyond. Stories like this are not myths. They are not invented for the purposes of entertainment, though they are undeniably entertaining. They are the documented, verifiable, living reality of what rare coins can mean to the people who find them and to the people who almost didn't. The 1954's Lincoln Wheat Penny, in its most extraordinary known form, valued at $88 million, is the perfect closing chapter to the story we've been telling today. It is a coin that carries within its tiny copper surface the weight of American history, the optimism and anxiety of 1954, the craftsmanship and character of the San Francisco Mint, the improbability of 7 decades of perfect preservation, and the passion of a collecting community that recognizes, with absolute conviction, that some things are worth far more than the number stamped upon them. Today, we have walked through 3 extraordinary coins. We began with the 1952 D Wheat Penny and its staggering $93 million valuation. We moved through the 1953 D Wheat Penny and its equally breathtaking $92 million story. And we have ended here, with the 1954's Wheat Penny and its $88 million grand finale, a coin that is rarer, more historically layered, and more emotionally resonant than almost anything else in the American numismatic canon. And here is the thought I want to leave you with, the thought that I hope follows you out of this video and into your day, your week, your life. The next great coin discovery is not going to happen in a museum. It is not going to happen in a professional dealer's vault. It is going to happen in someone's home, in someone's attic, in someone's garage, in a coffee tin or a mason jar or a small wooden box on a workbench. It might happen to a coin expert who has spent 40 years in the hobby. Or it might happen to someone who has never once thought about coins in their entire life, someone who just happened to look a little more carefully than usual at the change in their hand. That person could be anyone. And if you've watched this far, if you've stayed with us through every story, every detail, every dramatic twist in today's video, then you already know more than most people will ever know about what to look for. So go check your coins. Go look in those old jars and boxes and forgotten collections. Because somewhere out there, waiting patiently in the dark, a fortune is waiting to be found. And the only question is whether it's going to be found by you.